My biggest concern about Sirianni is that he's a continuation of Doug Peterson in that he's going to be manipulated by the owner and the GM, right?
Yeah.
And that they're going to take control of the situation. They haven't found the authority figure like the Andy Reid who they could trust to say, go run the football operations. Sirianni seems to me like a guy who's going to get run over by the owner and the GM. That's just how it looks to me from a distance.
You got your Mac and Mac guys here with you on Birds 365. John McMullen, Jody McDonald. Looking forward to the next 15, 20 minutes here with our next guest. I've had him on my national radio show many a time, but first time I get to see his smiling face. Jason Cole, NFL author, Hall of Fame voter, joins us here on Birds 365. How you doing, Jason?
I'm fantastic. What's going on?
Hey, Jason, good to see you.
Good to see you, John.
I don't know if you were on hold there. Well, Jody and I were talking about John Facenda, who's going to be honored by the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I wanted to get your take on that, being a voter and being involved in the process. Obviously not for that award, but just, you know, Jody and I were both on the same page saying, Facenda's not in? What the heck? What the heck is going on here with that particular award? Why did it take so long, or are we just off base? And they gave him a different award years ago. So just kind of explain that.
Well, number one, I was actually surprised as well. I was like, Facenda's not in already. Like I've never had to consider Facenda.
Yeah.
His name has never been put in front of me during the 8 years that I've been a voter, or 9 years now that I've been a voter. So it's one of those things where you don't think about people that are not put in front of you, right? So in this case, that award is not run by the voters themselves. We don't approve that. That's done in-house by the Hall of Fame itself and whatever their process is. I mean, if you look at the list, I mean, it's pretty outstanding list. So the fact that Facenda hasn't made it yet, when you start to look at the people who have been honored already, I don't know that it was necessarily an oversight as much as it's a pretty crowded list. It's sort of like when you talk about the senior committee, which we do run, and all the senior candidates. It's a pretty backlogged list of people who should be considered or should already be in, basically.
Jason, we like having guys like yourself on because you got a good national perspective and understand the whole league. We so narrow focus on our team, the Eagles here in Philadelphia. We need to get a broader scope look at things. So I'll ask you this question. Would you put Jalen Hurts in your top 40 quarterbacks in the National Football League? Because one national guy decided to pass on putting him in the top 40, not top 32. Top 40 with a couple of extra backups thrown in there. Is he on point? And Jalen Hurts got a lot to prove this year? Or did he show enough last year that you could sneak him into your top 40?
Look, I think Jalen Hurts is a really talented athlete who has enough traits in the modern game to get away with being a quarterback. He is not what you look for in a pocket passer. And I still think, despite the fact that you have Lamar Jackson, you have Kyler Murray, and you have Russell Wilson, all these guys who can move, the game is still won from the pocket. That's how you impact defenses the most. It's won from the pocket first, and then with the ability to create outside, all right? And there are some exceptions to that rule. I'm not saying that is a absolute blank canvas statement across the board. I mean, again, Lamar Jackson works because he has speed that is unreal and running ability that is unreal. He's off the charts. Jalen Hurts is not like that, right? He's not Lamar Jackson, okay? He has enough ability. He's closer to Russell Wilson, which is Russell Wilson is first a pocket quarterback who has the ability to create and run and do some interesting things. But Jalen Hurts doesn't throw the ball like Russell Wilson, right? And that's where you sit there and go, okay, this is where it starts to break down. Now, top 40, like after you get past the first like 15 or 20 quarterbacks in the league, what's the difference between 21 and 40? What's the difference between 21 and 50? It's really a matter of taste. Okay. And if this is Chris Sims's list, okay, Chris Sims, and I haven't, and I didn't check whether Jalen Hurts was on it or not, but I'm assuming that's what you mean. But
Correct.
Chris Sims is a quarterback purist. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how he looks at this. He looks at it from, this is what a quarterback is supposed to look like. This is how they're scouted. This is how my dad played. This is how I was trained to play. This is, that's what he's used to. And that's what he's looking for, with some moderate exceptions. Jalen Hurts doesn't fit into that category. So, yeah, I'm uncomfortable with Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, but I could be wrong. I will certainly say that. And the jury is sort of out on this one. But you guys know the Eagles have been sniffing around on other quarterbacks all offseason. They've been trying to figure out what are they doing at that position.
Yeah. Jason, when you talk about the quarterback position as a whole, one of the cliches you always hear is you can't teach accuracy. Now, you heard a lot of those things about Josh Allen. All of a sudden, Josh Allen got accurate for whatever reason. There was certainly an improvement from Wyoming to the professional level. Do you think that's a fair criticism? And in fact, Jalen's at 52%. That's not good enough. But can that get better? Can you teach that at the pro level?
I think it depends on certain factors, like what does your release point look like? Are you consistent when you get rid of the ball? Is your motion consistent? Like Cam Newton is never going to be a really accurate thrower. It's just like sort of when you guys watch Donovan McNabb. Donovan, threw low and hard, right? And Cam Newton throws high and loose. It's his throwing motion. It's just you look at that. Kyle Bowler, when he played in Baltimore, was just he was whipping the ball around as hard as he could. He didn't have finesse. He didn't have touch. Okay, he believed you throw it as far as you can or you throw it as hard as you can. You're not going to be able to teach that guy to back off of that. Jalen Hurts, there's something a little bit better in him. Is it Josh Allen better? Like, are you going to learn to throw with a little bit of touch? Are you going to learn to throw with a little more accuracy? Yeah, I think guys can get better. But, look, if you're not Joe Montana or Tom Brady, you're not going to become those guys. You're not going to be able to ever get that level. You can get a little bit better. You can get more accurate. You can take advantage of whatever your athletic ability is to then understand, if I run around a little bit, if I create a little bit, I'm going to be able to get the ball to here, and I can be a little bit more accurate that way. But you're never going to be elite in that category.
Jason, again, same kind of question I answered my first one. Give us that good national perspective on a topic that we may be in town a little too close to, a little too narrow focused. Nick Sirianni, new first-year head coach for the Eagles. The first thing we got from him was that he's an enthusiastic guy. He's got a lot of get up and go to his delivery and the way that he talks to players and the way that he coaches, for a guy like John who gets out there and gets to see a couple minutes on the field. But can he coach in the NFL? We have no idea. We got to wait and see. But we're trying to draw conclusions without him ever having coached a game. The rah-rah attitude, the rally the troops with positivity and pumping your fist and trying to get guys excited. We've seen it work in the NFL. We've seen it fail in the NFL. How do you determine which one it's more likely going to be before the season ever happens? Do you have a guy or two that you would make reference to who you saw as a first time out of the box head coach that either made it work or it kind of blew up in his face?
Look, do you prove to the players one way or the other that you know how to put them in the best position to win? That's the only thing that matters to players, okay? Whether players buy into what you do is, do you put me in position to win and make me look good, okay? And make me play better football. If you can do that, they don't care if you wear pom-poms, okay? Or if you're, have this, wear the hoodie like Belichick. They don't care, all right? All they care about is, do you put me in position to win? Do you put the team in position to win, okay? And there's a certain amount of authority that goes to that. Can you run the whole team and keep everybody going the right direction? But if we win, ultimately, if I play better as a player, I'm going to buy into whatever it is that you're doing. That's the most important thing in all of this. Now, I prefer authority. Okay, I think it's more important for an authority, but I'm not the GM. Okay, my biggest concern about Sirianni is that he's a continuation of Doug Peterson, in that he's going to be manipulated by the owner and the GM, right?
Yeah.
And that they're going to take control of the situation. They haven't found the authority figure like the Andy Reid, who they could trust to say, go run the football operations.
Do they want that figure, Jason?
Well, that was the thing that they were most successful with consistently, and they tried to get with Peterson. Unfortunately, Doug doesn't have that persona. I know Doug really well. I mean, I covered him when he was a quarterback with the Dolphins. He doesn't have the persona to go in to Howie or Jeff and say, hey, you guys got to back off. Okay, you guys got to let me run my part of the organization. You go do whatever it is you're going to do, and I'll win. Okay, he never did that, and they didn't trust him, and they ran over the top of him. All right, and that's their nature. Andy Reid came in. He had Joe Banner by his side. Joe knew that he wasn't going to be great at actually picking or coaching players, so he ran the analytics and he ran the finance side of it, and they were successful enough that Jeff stayed out of the way, right? But they haven't had that guy since then. And whether it was Chip Kelly or Doug Peterson, now Sirianni seems to me like a guy who's going to get run over by the owner and the GM. That's just how it looks to me from a distance.
Yeah, you typically get that pendulum effect when you change coaches. You go from players coach to disciplinarian or vice versa. That's typically how it kind of works. Doesn't seem to work that way, certainly in Philadelphia. From the outside looking in, and you know a lot of the participants, you're very close to Doug, as you said. How much has Jeffrey Lurie changed? Or was Andy Reid just a better politician, better able to handle an owner who wants to be involved? Because Jeff is here every day. He's watching practice. He's here every single day.
Look, Andy had a combination of knew how to work people, and he still does. He knows how to work people, make them feel like they're involved, make them feel like they're important. He does have a political element to him, while at the same time having an authority to say, look, I'm going to allow you to participate this much, but at the end of the day, I draw the line here. I make the decision here. I can't tell you the number of times, Joe Banner and Jeff Lurie would go to him with their analytics about, okay, this is what you should be doing on third down and running game situations. And you guys know it. Andy's greatest flaw was that he never developed a great running game in Philadelphia that he could completely trust, and he threw too much, right? So they would constantly go to him with these analytics about what are you supposed to do in fourth quarter. And he'd look at him and go, I'm going to do it my way. and he won games, right?
Yeah.
Like he won games. So what were they really ultimately going to say? And he developed players. So what were they really ultimately going to say? And the quarterbacks, every quarterback that he had ended up being better than that guy's ability or played to the best of his ability no matter what, whether that was Donovan, whether it was Michael Vick, or whether it was, AJ Feely, right?
Yeah.
Those guys always played to the best of their ability. So they, like he had the efficacy to go with it, that even if Joe and Jeff said, hey, maybe you should be running things a little bit differently, he'd say, I run football. Thank you.
Jason, I want to jump back to the quarterback position because I think you've got a little extra added value and information here in a competition I see coming over the next year. And that's the Eagles against the Broncos. You know the Broncos organization pretty well. You did your book, Relentless Life, with John Elway. The one thing John Elway hasn't been able to do is find the next John Elway in Denver. He got the nice little respite with Peyton Manning in there, won a Super Bowl, but he hasn't been able to find that young guy to pick up where John Elway left off when John Elway was a player. which means I think they are going to be a big-time player in the quarterback market next season. They've decided to go with Locke and Teddy Bridgewater this year. Good luck with that. But we here in Philadelphia think there's a real good chance the Eagles are looking for their next quarterback by the end of this season. I think, personally, the Broncos are looking for their next quarterback by the end of the season. Elway this offseason brought in a serious general manager to try and take a little of the emphasis off himself in being the guy to find that next quarterback. Am I reading the situation right? Are the Broncos going to be major players, either via draft, moving up in a draft, and or free agency if Aaron Rodgers ever gets there, if Deshaun Watson ever gets there? Are the Eagles and the Broncos going to be in competition for a franchise quarterback?
Yes, they are. The competition could come a little bit faster, depending on Aaron Rodgers. I don't think, if it's Aaron Rodgers, I don't think the Eagles are going to be in on that one. It's going to be a West Coast team because that's where Aaron's going to prefer to be. He's got his short list of teams that he wanted to play for. San Francisco was on top of that list, but San Francisco made their move a little bit prematurely, I would say. They probably could have made a trade work a little bit if they hadn't made the big trade up to get up into the top three. So, Rodgers is going to try and get out of there. I don't know if he's going to be able to set sort of that nuclear warhead off that's going to ultimately get him out of Green Bay. Like, is he going to blow up the locker room to the point where the Packers say, we can't even keep this guy around? That's hard for any player to do because your reputation takes a big hit when you do that, right? But we'll see if he does. Deshaun Watson is going to be available. I think he is radioactive for Houston. And actually, if I was Philadelphia or Denver or any team that's looking down the road saying, I need to get a franchise quarterback, I'd actually probably be willing to take Deshaun Watson on now at a cheaper price in terms of the draft compensation. And if if I have to pay him the $10 million for not playing this year, okay, I'll bite that bullet. That's a small investment for a franchise quarterback. If I can save myself, if I can say I can get him for 2 first-round picks plus a second-round pick or maybe a little bit more, instead of, okay, he's not suspended anymore, now it's going to cost me 3 or 4 first-round picks. I would rather pay less in the draft compensation and more in the money because, like, Deshaun Watson's going to play again. All right? As long as this is the material that is out there, if that's it, and we haven't seen any more of it, right?
No.
What he's done is stupid. What he's done is unsavory. What he's done, is a little weird, okay? Having 40 different masseuses or involved, that's sloppy with your life.
Right.
But I don't think there's nothing criminal here, okay? There's nothing that's going to send him to jail for an extended period of time or cost him the rest of his career with the NFL. That's how I view this. Is it going to be a 2-game suspension, a 6-game suspension, a year suspension? Maybe. But even if it's a year and I have to pay him $10 million to not play for a year, I'll take that. I'll take that on, and then I'll buy the rest of the contract, and I would buy low on the draft pick compensation, and I would deal with, whatever the fallout is. From the PR standpoint, the Eagles have been down this road, with Vic. They took on an even more difficult case in Vic, and they survived that one. I would be willing to go get Deshaun Watson.
So to kind of explore that a little bit further, Jason, Nick Cesaro came out and said a little bit that he expects that something will happen by the beginning of training camp. I think the assumption around the league is that'll be the commissioner's exempt list.
Sure.
Is the league sort of willing to tell teams behind the scenes, sort of wink, wink, yeah, Deshaun's going to be suspended, might be half a season, might be a full year. And does that make it easier for teams potentially trying to get a star player for essentially what would be pennies on the dollar? And maybe a better way to go about it, as you mentioned, than giving up 3 first-round picks if you wait.
Well, look, I don't know that the league. If I was Goodell, I would never give anybody that kind of guidance. I might, because I don't know what's going to happen next, right? I don't know. I've got my investigators, I've got everything, but I don't know what is the next thing around the corner that's going to happen that I may have to change my decision. So I'm not going to box myself in. I would only tell somebody, look, based on what I see so far, I don't anticipate, he's not going to be out for his career. Okay. I don't know I don't know if it's going to be 2 games or a full season, but I don't anticipate that. But I don't know what could happen. So you are taking on the liability that there's something else that's going to happen with this guy, or some other bit of information. So there is some risk, but that risk is mitigated by the fact that I'm going to be paying a lower price on the draft pick compensation, right, to take on somebody else's problem and get this guy a fresh start. Now, is Houston going to be willing to do that? Or are they going to be willing to sell low on this problem? They haven't so far, number one. Number 2, they've already weathered the worst of the storm, right? Number 3, I think Jack Easterby, the guy who kind of is the de facto president of the team, in some ways kind of likes having Deshaun Watson around because it takes all of the glare off of Jack Easterby, right? Whether he really understands that or not, it's like, okay, this guy's okay for me because everybody's screaming about Deshaun Watson, they're not screaming about me right now. Okay, so there's a lot that has to play out, but that would be the road I would go down if I was a general manager and I wanted to have Deshaun Watson. I wouldn't be afraid of what I have seen so far. And I would do my due diligence. I would send my private investigators. I would find out everything that I possibly could about what am I going to expect next. I'd be talking to Goodell. I'd be talking to the lawyers. As much as I could. I try and find out everything that I could beforehand. But right now, knowing what I know publicly, I would probably be willing to trade for him, knowing he's going to play someday.
All right, I got another QB question for you, and I'll try and streamline it as best I can. Knowing full well to ask 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, are Eagle fans going to look back and go, why did we ever move away from Carson Wentz? Will have a lot to do with what the Eagles quarterback does. That will affect the way people look at Carson Wentz and if he had stayed. I won't even ask you to do that. Just give me your read on Carson Wentz. In his situation now, reunited with Frank Reich in Indianapolis, maybe away from the pressure cooker that is Philadelphia, a little less pressure in Indiana. How do you think Carson Wentz plays going forward next 2, 3, 4 years? Is it something that Eagle fans will look back and say, man, we had that guy, how'd we ever let him go?
Well, first of all, a little less pressure in Indianapolis versus Philadelphia. Like the fan bases are anything close in those 2 cities.
All right. I might have undersold it a little bit. Okay, thank you.
And the media, that really tough indie media, look, if Carson Wentz is ever going to make it, he's going to have to make it in a town like Indianapolis where they have, less glare, obviously, at this point. I think it's been shown he's not the most mentally tough guy out there in terms of handling the pressure that's around him. He didn't handle the fact that Nick Foles won a Super Bowl very well. He just, it didn't come together for him. He felt like he was second guessed. And that's, if you're like that as a quarterback, you're not going to make it in this league. You're just not. So I think overwhelmingly I would bet against, he might be good. I don't think he's going to be fantastic. So I think that overwhelmingly you're not going to regret it. But he is in the best possible situation for him to make it in any way, shape, or form. Because yes, it's in a lower glare city, lower glare media, with a coach who knows how to handle him, who's gotten something out of him before. So if ever he's going to make it, this is the opportunity. But you always have to say, would that happen in Philadelphia? No. It just wouldn't. Yeah. He wasn't ready. He couldn't do it. He, when they won a Super Bowl without him, it got inside of his head. When he got hurt, it got inside of his head. He wasn't a great leader of men. And the Eagles sort of screwed it up because they didn't surround him with great talent either. So it all comes some cumulative effect of he lost his confidence. Whatever mojo he had was gone, and it wasn't going to come back. It didn't happen. So if I'm an Eagles fan, you say, okay, great, go have a great career, but I know you weren't. I know you weren't going to make it in this town. You just have to look at it that way.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too, Jason, because I think free agencies, trades in any sport, I think when they work out, people assume it would have worked out in the original town. That's not necessarily the case. So I think it's a good way to look at it. One final thing for me. We talked about Aaron a little bit. Aaron Rodgers, that's the biggest story in the NFL offseason. July 2nd is sort of a linchpin because you can opt out of the season. He's not going to opt out. You mentioned the nuclear part of it. People have talked about Carson Palmer, maybe goes down that route. But even though Aaron doesn't need the money, I've yet to meet the guy that's given back $23 million. So
Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, that's true. Ultimately, what do you think is going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to play for the Green Bay Packers? And why would the Packers want him as a lame duck? If they're going to say, play one final year, why do you want a lame duck?
Because maybe you've seen Jordan Love practice. I'm just saying. I don't know. I don't know if Jordan Love really is good or not. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
so I don't want to put that on him. The odds are that he's not Aaron Rodgers. So if you're Matt LaFleur, you're looking like my best chance is that dude, Aaron Rodgers, and I'll take my chance with that dude. And we'll see if we keep him beyond this year on the contract that we have, or whatever. Let that play out. Okay. Look, Aaron's different. Aaron takes slights very seriously. I mean, the fact that he's disassociated himself from his parents and his brothers, if you're willing to do that, you can say goodbye to Green Bay too, right? Like you're a pretty willful human being. So if anybody's going to do this, it's Aaron Rodgers. But I'm just going to say it's hard. It's really, really hard to go down that path because you know that an entire city is going to hate you. John Elway did it with Baltimore. Baltimore still hates John Elway. Okay? And that's unfair because the guy who really screwed it up was Bob Irsay, but whatever. He wasn't the one who made the public statement, I don't want to play in Baltimore, right? It was really, I don't want to play for the Colts and Irsay and Frank Kush, but he said Baltimore, and that was where he really got it wrong, right? So it's hard to go down that path. It's hard to say, go ahead, hate me. I don't care. I don't care at all if you hate me. I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. I can't work for these people. I can't tolerate the fact that you haven't, for the last 10 years, surrounded me with more talent. And then you made it even worse where you took a first-round pick and you picked my successor. That is the John Elway story in 1992, all right? When in 1992, they're supposed to take Carl Pickens with their first-round pick, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, right? This is what Dan Reeves was supposed to do. What did he do? He took Tommy Maddox out of UCLA. That was the last year those two guys were together. Reeves is gone after that year, okay? Because it was a full-on war between Elway and Reeves. So I think somebody's going to be gone in Green Bay. I think there's a strong likelihood it's Aaron Rodgers. If it was me, I would probably be replacing the general manager because it's easier to find GMs than it is to find quarterbacks.
All right, Jason, last one. This is a story that's kind of faded into the background the last week or so because nobody is together in a camp anywhere. But soon enough, training camps are going to open. It was a pretty good story 2 weeks ago when there were some still teams gathering together because the NFL still has COVID protocols in place. If a team can get upwards of 85% people vaccinated, those protocols get eased and relaxed quite significantly. And everyone is speculating as to how many teams are going to get to 85% by the time camp opens. How many do you think it's going to be? How many are going to have holdouts and guys who just want to make the decision for themselves and not be told what to do? Is this going to be a major story come 3 weeks from now when camps open up again?
I think we'll probably have. I don't know what the numbers are going to look like. Were there like 2 teams that are already at 85%?
Yeah.
So if you get 2 now, if somebody was going to take the vaccine, they were already going to. They should have already done it by now, right? They've had ample time to take the vaccine.
Sure.
So I don't think the numbers are going to grow. Are we going to get to 6 or 7? Is it going to go up from there? Probably not significantly, because again, if you are willing to take the vaccine, you had every opportunity to do it now. Why didn't you do it already by now? Maybe you'll feel some pressure, and the list will grow to 9 or 10. But I think we're going to have 19 or 20 teams. At the end of the day, is it going to really matter? I don't think so. I think that the NFL proved that they were able to get through an entire season last year. And granted, there were some moments that it looked like it might not happen. Games were moved to Wednesdays and Thursdays and all this other stuff, right? And it gets harder when you're selling tickets. I get that. Fans in the stand change a lot of things, right? But if they got through last season without missing any games, I think they're going to get through this season without missing any games. I think they're going to find a way to do it, and it helps when you only have to play once a week. And I think that Major League Baseball is showing, and even the NBA is showing, you can get through a season, without having a lot of people vaccinated. So I think we're going to get through next season okay. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal, and I think holding out and not getting vaccinated is kind of silly, but I'm also not going to argue with a guy like Cole Beasley, who feels very strongly that he doesn't want to take a vaccine, right? If that's your choice, not to take a vaccine, but understand you're putting your team at risk. Just like last year, the Denver Broncos, and I think this is one of the most important games in anybody of last season.
Yeah.
That the NFL made a statement look, you screw this up, we don't care if you're playing with a guy, who hasn't played quarterback since college. You're going to play. We're going to get through this season. It's going to happen. And you're going to pay the price by playing an uncompetitive game. And once you play an uncompetitive game, then the pressure is really on from all your teammates who start looking at you going, hey, dude, you screwed this up for us and we embarrassed ourselves and we lost a game because of you. When that happens, then the rest of the league falls into place.
That's why we have Jason Cole on to give us insight and opinion like that. Jason, great stuff today. We're going to be calling on you again. Thanks for hopping on with us. We'll talk to you again down the road.
All right, guys. Take care.
My pleasure. That is Jason Cole, former NFL beat reporter, author, and Hall of Fame voter. You know what I like most about Jason, Johnny Mac? I've mentioned I've had him on my radio show for you. He always sounds so certain of what he's saying.
Yeah, you got to, man.
I don't know if it's just his voice or the way that he says it. I've never seen him before because he's always on the other end of a telephone line. But just looking at him as well, any question you ask him, it sounds like he knows exactly the answer. He doesn't think. He doesn't have to hem. He doesn't have to awe. He's got the answer, and he just clearly and plainly states it for you.
Well, if you're comfortable with your opinion, you can be comfortable giving it. So that's what I like about Jason. He's well educated on the subject, so he's very competent talking about them. He
really was. And it was just a treat for me because he's a guy who I had interviewed, 10, 12 times over the year. But I'd never seen him before, right? And it was good to punch him up here on Birds 365. All right, we're running late. We'll take our final timeout, come back, put a bow on the show. Stay with us.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.